I could request the guests at the back to please take their seats. My colleagues at the door, if you could we're ready to begin a very special session on women leadership in the uniformed services. On stage with us are Surgeon Commander Shazia Khan, who is a medical officer with the Indian Navy, Lieutenant Commander Swati Bhandari, Naval Air Operations Officer of the Indian Navy, Lieutenant Commander Tavishi Singh, a naval constructor, and Lieutenant Commander Disha Amrit from Naval Air Operations. And moderating the session is Dr. Samir Saran, President, Observer Research Foundation. Over to you, sir.
Can we have the movie first? Excellent. I think we saw a few superstars on the screen. Some of them have joined us as well. So it's good to recognize that we have panelists who have movies made after them for obviously, the purpose of what we are trying to discuss today. Women leadership, getting more women in the armed forces, making them part of future security and strategic conversations and architectures. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for doing this for us. And largely, we are going to continue the conversation that we had in the previous session. Very interesting ideas. But I will also like to tease out a couple of conversations that might be more related to the armed forces and hear how you see some of those unfolding, how challenging or what are the opportunities that you see available today. And of course, the most important question, rather than you adapting to the armed forces, are the armed forces adapting to the new workforce? And are they becoming a friendlier and more responsive organization that is going to be able to harness the best of our talent, which is going to be from among a much diverse Indian demography. So let me first start with you, Tavishi. And we have agreed that we will drop all the honorifics, no doctors and no lieutenant commanders. We have 3 lieutenant commanders, 1 commander, and a couple of others joining us. But Tavishi, let me start with you. We saw the seat belt example given by Devjani in the morning session, designed for men, and the seat belts and leading to fatal consequences. How is that playing out in the defense forces? You have a different workforce, you have old hardware, you have old mindsets, you have old teams that are still predominantly men. Are armed forces designed for women leadership?
Okay, so first of all, I would say like Indian Navy is gender neutral. So the opportunity that we get is equivalent to my male counterpart. So like when I was serving in the naval dockyard for 3+ years, so I was tasked with the job of repairing warships, and I was commanding workers who are primarily men. skilled, semi-skilled, much older than me in the age group of 35 to 50. And for initially, it was slightly jarring for them to have this a dainty lady, soft-spoken, commanding them, but my stripes allowed me to command them. But what is more to that is my work. So I had to earn their trust. I can command them. For them to execute and deliver the what I am asking them to, I have to be on ground to really get that out of them. So I had to spend, I didn't say I had to, I enjoyed spending nights working on ships. I was on ship at 3 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, working alongside them, learning from them, sweating it out. And eventually I did gain their trust. And so when you talk about the seat belt, the warship, so because of my height, I had difficulty climbing the ladders at times or the scaffolding if I had to do an inspection of the hull outside. But somehow we would get through it. But there's pros and cons. Since I'm dainty, I could really get into the tanks. So that was easier for me. So there's plus and minus to both. So if I had trouble climbing ladders, I would really slither through the tanks and get that survey done. So I mean, there's pros and cons, but I'm a naval constructor. So I design warships. And we have lady officers serving on board ships who are giving us feedback as to what is good, what is a pro, what is a con, what they would want to be changed. And we're undertaking retrofitment on the existing warships, and the ones which we are constructing or designing for the future, we're keeping that in mind.
So the next generation or the new generation of fleet that we roll out is going to be more gender agnostic, women friendly.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Excellent. But on the same question, I want to come back to that the gender dynamic again. I'm just going to come back to you on that. But maybe let me turn to Shazia, Commander, in the medical field. Two questions for you. One is, of course, I think medical instruments are universal in some sense, so I don't think you have a challenge of equipment. Or maybe you do. You do.
Actually, I'm a laparoscopic surgeon. I'm an endoscopist. So there are instruments which are held in hand and used. And they have been designed as per European standards. So for an average Asian woman or even a male, because I trained in Taiwan for a year, I did my fellowship there. So my professors, even their hands, we wear a glove size of 5 to 6 maybe, the women. Men wear 7 to 8. So the instruments have been designed for men. And nowhere, when I speak to the manufacturers, that's the Covidian, Medtronic, all these medical pharmacy, medical industries, they say, ma'am, it will take time. It will take time to have that many women surgeons for us to design the equipments which are suited as per their hands. So yes, there is a disparity there.
And also I would like to ask you that, earlier when you joined the medical corps, and especially the Indian Armed Forces Medical Corps, we were not necessarily as agile or as responsive to distress overseas. Today we are sending contingents as first responders to different locations, to conservative traditional geographies, to unfamiliar terrains. How are women being geared up for some of the new deployments that India is making very rapidly? For example, in Turkey, that iconic film of the photograph of an Indian woman doctor providing first response to those who were in trouble. How exciting is this new dimension, and how are you preparing for it?
Okay, so there was a gap of around 25 years when women were not on board ships. It started again, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years back. So, and though the medical missions have been going on, the rescue missions, a call to disaster, humanitarian relief, Indian Navy has been doing that. Now, the point is, with women being included on board ships, the medical officers are now part of these rescue missions. And seeing them, seeing a woman, it's a soft force. What I have read recently is that even women as part of UN peacekeeping mission, the people, the natives respond more to them than they would respond to the male combatant. So yes, having women there as first responders in humanitarian needs from Navy, from Army also. In Turkey, we saw Operation Dost, where the picture of 60 para-field hospitals medical officer with a Turkish woman was in the headlines. Yeah, so yes, it is exciting because that is something else which the youngsters would look to responding in humanitarian conditions.
You wanted to come in.
I would like to add to this. So, right at the grassroots level, so when I was working on field, I was working with skilled, semi-skilled workers who come from rural backgrounds. So for them to see that there's a girl out there who's working and delivering, the thought process changes and they're like, you know what, my daughter can do this too. And when you sit down with them and you ask them, are you married? Do you have children? Do you have a daughter? Is she studying? Are you educating her? What is your plan for her? That really, that's just having that conversation with those workers. I've had them call me back, have video calls with their daughters, and just ask me how can they join the armed forces or how can they take up science and what else can they do. It really opened their mindset also, just having one odd of us working with them alongside them.
You know, I want to ask so many questions, but I'm going to come back. Disha, you are in charge of the big parades. The Prime Minister, or I saw a circular more recently which says that the next Republic Day is going to only have women contingent. How important are these symbolic show of women's presence in the services? Do you see a response increase from civil society, from the rest of the population when you have some of these demonstrations? What is the kind of, the goals that such activities have for themselves?
Okay, so very good afternoon to all of you here. Firstly, I want to ask a question to all of you. So, how many of you here think that what you are today comes from home? So, when I was a child, my parents always told me, we have a Rani Lakshmi Bhai here in my house. So that is when I thought I am a soldier. Right from my childhood, I used to always think I'm already a soldier. So this is the kind of upbringing that we need. So this is what we expect from our parents and the kind of upbringing for a women-led development. So coming to the Republic Day parade, so I led the Republic Day parade, the naval contingent in the Kartavya Path this year. So the impact that I received, the response that I received from a lot of young girls and women in uniform and without uniform. So it was spectacular because everyone came to me and they were like, even I want to do this. We want to lead the contingent. So the kind of mindset that they have is they want to lead. It's not that they want to participate. It was like they wanted to lead. So this was the kind of response that I had got. So I believe that women are unique in themselves. So that is how they need to shine, and they will definitely shine.
And we heard from the previous panel that there is a need for champions and heroes and those you aspire to. So thank you for the job you're doing. But here is a question to all of you, and I'm going to come to a combat question in a bit. I know you are the one with the fighter aircraft there. I saw the movie. So I'm going to come to you with a specific question, but a general question to all of you. Look, my knowledge of armed forces is Bollywood and Hollywood, okay?
That was ours when we joined. Before we joined, that was
it. So that's my knowledge. So now but there was some sense that in the armed forces you come as individuals and then you build some buddy systems and you create a group dynamic and one for all for one, etc., right? Every army has some variation of it, right? So tell me, how does gender play what is the gender dynamic when you have to now replace the buddy system with, or rather in the buddy system, have a much wider basket of identities, gender identities specifically. How does that play out?
All right, so when we train alongside our male counterparts. We wear the same uniform, we do the same exercises, the same parade, we follow the same routine. And yes, we do come as individuals, but throughout the training, there is a very beautiful thing that happens. So we all come from different parts of the country together as individuals. And during the training, like there's a small exercise and somebody says like, you know what, run to that wall and come back. And the first person who comes is secured and the rest of you continue running till as and when somebody comes, you keep going. And initially everybody is so individualistic that everybody is like racing to just somehow reach first and then leave. And eventually, when we train together with the girls and the guys together, and we have tears and blood and sweat, all of it, there comes a point when somebody says, run to that wall and come back, and everybody runs at the same pace as the slowest person in the group. And even if we have to run to that wall 50 times, we will run with the slowest person and come back to the finish line together so that we don't leave that one person behind. Invariably, I was the slowest person because with my male counterparts, my course-mates, they always ran with me.
You know, let me come to you, Swati. I'm sure you were like one of the fast ones there, right? So how was your experience being, especially in the combat arm of the armed forces and the Navy specifically? What has your journey been so far? How exciting has it been? What has changed? How have you changed the armed forces?
First of all, I just want to say that presently I'm I'm like posted as a Naval Air Operation Officer, and I'm into the aviation branch or the Naval Air Arm of the Indian Navy. So when I passed out from 12th class, I genuinely had fears of height. But coming into the Navy and actually coming into the aviation branch, I don't remember the time when I actually shifted or transited from this fear of height to actually delivering the weapons on board aircraft. Now we talk about the combat role. Earlier the women they only came into the non-combat role, but now women are also inducting in the combat roles. With this, they are likely to fight the wars in the future, specifically in the combat roles. Today the war is all about the intelligent war, the digitized war, and more focused on the technology. So I feel that these smarter women like us, who are directly involved in the forefront for fighting the war, and the smarter women like you and outside, who are indirectly involving themselves towards the preparation of these wars, we are trained and we can face these wars with full
aplomb. So smarter weapons, smarter humans. Yes. That's the new
smarter women.
Okay, great. So I think that's a good connection you've made there. No, but let me ask you the question on that buddy system in the combat role. Combat role also, used to have these machismo, right? There was this testosterone fueled movies around these combat roles so the soldiers being the tough, masculine, brooding, silent varieties, right? So now, are you gradually seeing that buddy system become far more inclusive?
Yeah, definitely the buddy system is becoming far more inclusive. If I talk about the combat, as Tavishi told, it's a very small example that in the forces, it's all about the teamwork. Now today, if I go and I have to hit a ship somewhere in the vast ocean, so I go with my counterpart. It's the CRM that we follow in the aircraft, the crew resource management, wherein it's not only the me who is the single person who is flying, or it's only the pilot who is flying and giving because of the pilot we are going to win that particular mission or particular job. It's the person who is sitting as the mission commander as me, and the person who is there with me. So both of us, we have to make efforts and we have to ensure that we accomplish whatever mission has been given to me.
To add on to that, I think when you give a woman an opportunity and a platform to perform, and when she performs, after a point she stops being a gender, a woman, and she becomes a human, and that's what people respond to. Like Disha did not mention the fact, but when she was the contingent commander, there is a voting system that happens, that the entire contingent, all the sailors who are working behind her, who do they want as their contingent commander. So there was a male officer also who practiced alongside her, and it was her, and all the sailors voted for her. So they responded to the person in her and not the gender. So I think it is pure, you give a woman a platform, and her merit and her sheer that the desire, we have this thirst to prove, and we will go above and beyond what probably a man would, to just prove that point that, you know what, my presence here is justified, and that is why I'm here, and that is what it gives that extra edge to us, which I know she really, she got all the votes, so that speaks volumes. So that's how it became inclusive also. So for the sailors to include her as a part of their commander, that's how she's changing the forces, you can say.
Correct. I think that's important. Disha, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, so we had the selection procedure. So basically the entire 3 months that we had for the practice is we used to come early in the morning in winters of Delhi, during the winters of Delhi at around 4 o'clock, and we used to start our practice early in the morning, and then it continued for 4 to 5 hours. And the selection procedure, the kind of march past, the 14-kilometer stretch that you do, it is all same for both men and women. So there is no difference between the schedule or the kind of practice that you can say. And having mentioned Lieutenant Commander Tavishi, thank you for this. And the entire team of mine, including the instructors, they did not consider the fact that I was a woman. They considered how well I was doing my parade and how well I had the bearing of the entire situation there and everything that involved in the parade. And that is how it helped me, to lead at the end.
We heard in the previous panel that there are times in a woman's journey when there are commitments at home. We heard about there's a time when marriage and maternity, right? And in the previous panel, we heard these two.
And paternity in future.
And paternity in future. Yeah. So my question to you is, I'm sure there is also that particular dimension that women in combat also face. And my specific query to understand that how conducive is the work environment today, and is it increasingly becoming far more open to some of these dimensions, and how do you also, what are the conversations you have at home? I'm sure even families like your parents wanted you to be a warrior princess. Lakshmi Bai was a warrior princess in India, so they wanted you to be a warrior. But now, how are you negotiating that space in terms of family and society? And how are you negotiating your space with the institution? How is that unfolding? Shazia, you want to start?
So, that's a very good question actually, because being in armed forces, I don't know about others, but what I have realized is armed forces is my second family. My first family is my family, from the family I come from. The second is the armed forces. So when we are on a mission, when they are on a mission, or when I am deployed as part of a peacekeeping force or humanitarian mission, I know I am leaving my family behind, my parents behind, and if there's an emergency, the unit, in my case my hospital, the armed forces will take care of them. They are my backup support system. They are there for each call. I'll just give an example. I was doing my super specialization in laparoscopy in Taiwan for a year in 2019, just before COVID. And I was there during COVID actually, and my father was seriously ill. He was in the ICU. I could not come back. But the support system I had back there, right from the commanding officer, right to my department head, they all formed a cocoon around my father. And that gave me so much mental peace. I was free to pursue my course. I was not deviated from it. I completed my course. They told me, you will complete your course, you'll complete your training, and then only you'll come back. We'll take care of your father. And he did come out of it, and it was all thanks to my second family. That's the armed forces for it.
You wanted to come in, Swati?
Yeah, as already ma'am already brought out that definitely it's not only the earlier when the women are not that much getting inducted to the armed forces, wherein the man, they need to go out and go at the forefront. So Navy or talk about any armed forces, they used to take care of the family or the spouse and the children. It goes similar way it goes for us also. Now, since we have more number of people are coming to the armed forces, we also have so many spouses who are from the civil background, and they are also equally taken care, and equally they are being asked from the organization. So on the family background, I must say that if you talk about towards the combat role, so with the induction of the permanent commission, like I am also short service commission, but now with the women-led development, I am getting that opportunity now to enroll as permanent commission. And also there are women officers who are getting enrolled as permanent officers in NDA. So once coming, the idea of becoming a now permanent commissioned officers, the courses, there are a lot of courses which are now being provided to the women, as a specialist officer, so that I can go and be appointed as a specialist officer on board ships, and who knows, in the future going to become a commanding officer of the ship.
Basically rise in service and have decision-making roles at all level of the organization, because now we are inducting Agniveers, those are sailors. So lower decks, so we'll have ladies working in lower decks. We still now have them as only officers, So now with permanent commission, we'll have them rise up in service, and with Agniveer, we have them being inducted in the lower decks also. And when it comes to balancing family, I will quote you and say Navy and Armed Forces have a buddy system. So nobody's ever left unattended to.
I think that's something rest of the organizations should take a lesson on, how the institution rallies around individuals. I think when we talk about congenial workspaces, this is a good example of that. So well done,
And
Navy.
also one more thing, apart from the buddy system, there is something called divisional system, you know. So we are supposed to, as officer and the men who will be going with us in the war, in the armed forces, while they're working in armed forces, we are given, I mean, we are that much interconnected that I will be knowing each and every about my men and the men who are working at the forefront. I have to literally take care of their welfare so that once they are at the family members and they are at peace from here, they can actually deliver a better, you know, when it comes about war.
So I'm going to ask you a final question, then I'm going to turn it to the audience for maybe 3 questions. I'll take 3 from the audience. But my final question to you. We also talked about partnership, formation. Do you find that today folks in the armed forces, in the defense bureaucracy, and all of you today are building that kind of a new alliance to open up and change and transform the armed forces so that it becomes a welcoming and a significant career option for women in the future? Does anyone want to come in on that? Tavishi. And then I'll come to you, Shah.
Navy has always been very welcoming to women, but there's a slight catch. So while they're welcoming, they're still adjusting and trying to understand us. So there is a slight learning that is going on for a while, but I won't say Navy is not welcoming. It's very welcoming, it's very gender neutral. The job or the role which I get for my education is equivalent to what a man would get for his equivalent education. So the roles are defined, but there's a lot of space which you need to create for yourself, and it's most welcomed. So like the moment I say that to my superior that, you know what, sir, I think we should do it this way and not that way, or maybe, you know, I feel a little that you're probably not asking me enough. So there have been situations where the officer has felt, you know what, sending her on board at 3 a.m. in the morning, she might not want to go. So that's when I step in and I say, no, that's my ship, I want to go. So you don't please take that call and say like, no, you don't go. I will go at 3 a.m. in the morning. And the beauty is that I have never felt unsafe. So the entire dockyard, the entire naval structure is so secure. Never in my head did I ever feel that, you know what, I'm a girl, I'm a lady. So the entire ship is fully, so that time it was manned by a crew of all men, sailors, officers, and eventually, so initially they were also a little jarred that what is this girl coming at 3 a.m. in the morning and taking rounds of the ship. And after a while they got so used to it, they used to keep lemon water for me in the wardroom. She'll come at 3 a.m. in the morning, she might want to have a lemon water or a juice or something, so they would keep it in the pantry. So that's how, like, so it's very welcoming, but you need to push and create your space a little bit.
Shazia, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to add that we also need to have women, you know, as we're talking about women-led development. In armed forces, we all are doing a small bit as leaders in our own sphere. But then we need to look at the bigger picture, someone up there who's a mentor, who's guiding us. For me, I'm glad to say I'm from the medical field, which was one of the first to have a 3-star general, a vice admiral. Our present DGMS Navy is a Vice Admiral Aarti Sareen, who's a lady officer. She's a radiologist. So when I was a trainee, when I was a young girl in Armed Forces Medical College with bright eyes, I met a lady called Lieutenant General Punita Arora. She was one of the first generals from the medical branch, and I asked, ma'am, I was a protocol officer. So I asked, ma'am, what is it that a woman has to do to gain, you know, equivalence with a man in the medical field, in the armed forces? She just told me one thing, कि whatever said and done, a woman has to perform 10 times as much as the man to get that much recognition. So that was something which I always kept in my mind. It always had a bearing on whatever I did. So, and as I grew in service, I've completed 16.5 years in these uniform. So in these 16.5 years, I have met some 4 or 5 women who have been mentors, who have mentored other women, and who have shown me that that is what I am supposed to do to help these young girls to make a decision in their life, whether they want to take short service, permanent commission, to motivate them to, you know, take permanent commission so that they can rise in their careers. You have to guide them because they don't know.
So you are mentoring now the next generation. Very good.
So I wanted to say it is time for women now to, you know, take responsibility and keep shining and bright, rising.
So good. So
That is a-
well done, Disha. I'm going to take questions now. Do anyone want to come in from the audience? Some hands, please, and then we'll get the mic to you. We have the first question here at top of the table. And please catch my attention. I'll also divert the mic to you if someone in the back there wants to ask. There was a gentleman I couldn't give the mic to last time. Would you like to come in? I'm just giving you. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you very much, ladies. I really enjoyed listening to you. And I feel like all of you guys are go-getters. You want it and you go out there, you get it. And you came from families that are very supportive. You have a government that's supportive. You have a work environment that's very supportive. So even if you have to work 4 or 5 times than a man or 10 times to prove yourself, what advice would you give someone who doesn't have the structure that you guys have?
Tavish, you want to respond to that? You have a safe work environment. Your dogs are safe. And you have men folks who keep lemonade for you when you get to your workplace. But every work environment is not like that. What advice do you give to those women?
So, what you're asking, I can't relate to it that much because fortunately I have been in a rather cocooned environment of the armed forces which has sheltered me from a lot of which is outside in the corporate world and the private sector. But what little that I try and do is I make it a point. So like you had mentioned talk to people and engage. You had particularly mentioned that and I made a note of that. So what I do is like whenever I take a cab, I engage with the cab driver and I really drill down on him that you know what, are you married, do you have a daughter, are you educating her, and I get after them. I think I'm quite annoying that way. But there have been times when they've dropped me back home, they have got out of the cab and they have said, you know what, you have changed my mindset and I thank you for that. And a couple of times some of them folded their hands at me and I felt so overwhelmed that just that one conversation would probably bring a change in somebody's mindset. I can't change the environment outside, but what little I can do is change the mindset of the fathers or the brothers of those young girls out there.
Okay, I just want to add one point. I believe, as per my experience in the armed forces and especially in the as Naval Air Operation Officer, it is one of the most important thing is how good you are at your job, how professional you are at your job. If you are, nobody can stop you. First thing. Second thing, okay, now coming to this profession and taking all these opportunities, you really need to educate your girls. Okay, it starts from the beginning, right from when she's ready to go to the school. So how I am ensuring that I am giving the better education and also similarly, you know, the maid who is working in my house and the maids and the other females who cannot afford, maybe in some way I'm contributing or maybe I'm encouraging them to send their daughters to go and study, get educated, and they can dream for further and further. Maybe in that way.
Can you have the gentleman at the back?
Yes, with pleasure. And well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Jorge Laguna Celis. I am the head of the Secretariat of the One Planet Network, which is a network of over 10,000 practitioners that's working on sustainable consumption and production under the agreement of the CG12. I was very much moved and touched by actually both panels. And my comment for the first one that is also applicable for the second one, it is one, we heard the message of the importance of leadership. Leadership contributes to make change in our systems, in our structures. We also had the importance of having gender disaggregated data, which is absolutely critical for better policies. And now we have heard something, a very important message that I also take home. And in my words, it is sometimes we feel like we cannot change the systems on our own, but we can change our own world, our own lifestyles by our own individual actions. And seeing these wonderful examples of leadership at all levels is inspiring. The message that we want to share that goes a bit beyond in the context of women-led development, it is that also we have to look at solutions that work across what we call, from an environmental perspective, high-impact sectors. For example, in the buildings and construction industry that's driving a lot of the pollution challenges that we are seeing, only 10% of the workforce is led or is composed by women. If we increase that share, We can find innovative solutions. We can find different materials. We can find different approaches. So my message here, and the same goes, for example, for another sector in which we're extremely active, and that we're seeing it here in beautiful Goa, which is the tourism sector. Tourism sector also has its own challenges, in the sense that perhaps there is a large percentage of the workforce that's composed of women, but yet this percentage of the workforce is not leading, in many cases, the industries, or is not making the change. So solutions that work across these industries and these high-impact sectors, as we saw in the case of the Army, are extremely important.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You want to come in, Tavishi, or do you want to come in, Swati? Do you want to respond? Sure. But after that. So do you want to just come in?
I think what you're trying to say is become job creators and not job seekers is, I think, what you're trying to get at.
Also, you mentioned that you were working with the workforce that was entirely men.
Primarily men, yes.
Yeah, and now if that had a fair sprinkling of diversity, would that workforce be far more conducive to building something that is useful to everyone?
So now, and I'll add to that. Okay, so in the dockyard which I was working, I was in fabrication, which is welding, plating, and all of that. So that is more men-oriented, but at the same time, we had electronics and telecom and all of that. That had a lot of female workers. We had 300 plus women workers in the dockyard serving day in and day out. So while I interacted with a certain part of them because of my job role, there were a lot of women workers, and they do rise in their sphere, become chargemen, become foremen, and then they lead the workers below them. So they are also leaders in their own sphere.
Thank you. You wanted to come in, sorry, Nikhil. I continue. Go ahead.
I actually want to, I think her question also wasn't completely answered, and clearly they've given you quite a picture of the Navy. Of course, they've read the brief well, but they haven't had, I don't think they've been fair to the extent that they actually, what they go through. Because I'll give you the male perspective of the forces. When I enter a room, I, of course, am not trying to prove anything. Like, I have it on a platter. That they do not. And even in a patriarchal society like India, if I were to be put amongst 500 women on a ship, I would be intimidated. But when we are saying women are going to sea, we're talking about one woman amongst 350 to 400 men sailing. So they're not working under similar conditions at all. So when they're creating a space, I would like to tell you that they're going beyond, really beyond, pushing it way beyond a man has to. So in that question, when you said that they're in a safe environment and what would you want to do, I mean, what can they do for a safer environment outside? I would like to go back to a question where there was a male feminist who had stood up. It is so important that a male feminist talks to men who are not feminists. It is noticed that mostly men feminists are towing their line amongst other male feminists or amongst when they're talking to other women. But it is important for male feminists to talk in a locker room where they're outnumbered and the discussion goes against a woman. And that's where they need to stand, because that's where a woman would not have access.
Fair point.
Right?
I think that's a good point. That's the additionality they bring in. Go to the boys' locker room and talk to them. So that's an important point.
That's the part I want
Nikhil, I want to give them the last chance, last word, and then I want to close this panel. So thank you for that intervention. We also have, by the way, we have two lieutenant commanders, women, who are right now in the Indian Ocean, and I want to also acknowledge them through a short video. They were meant to join us on a live link. Unfortunately, God knows, the sat phone is not working, the sat link is not working. They are in the high seas and they were going to be speaking to you, but we have a small video. But before that, let me just quickly, Tavishi, if you want to introduce them, the two who we are going to present a video on.
You want me to do that right now?
Yeah, but before that, if anyone else wants to have a final word, you wanted to say something, Disha, on the question, and then we can turn it to.
No, I was just saying the mindset of women being passive towards the development should be an active.
Correct.
It should be an active development of women towards the success is what I think.
Shazia, any final words before we turn to Tavishi?
The same thing, that armed forces is a general neutral force. Everyone is given the same platform. The one who performs moves ahead, as it is in any other this thing. So for a woman, if she wants to succeed in armed forces, if she wants to lead, she has to take the initiative, she has to march ahead, she has to become a mentor, she has to guide others. That's my take on this.
But she does have to do a little extra than what a man does.
10%.
Okay, so can you introduce your colleagues?
So we have a special surprise for you. We have two of our finest officers, Lieutenant Commander Dilna and Lieutenant Commander Rupa, who have sent over a voice message to us from the middle of the ocean. They're on a 17-meter long vessel and they're sailing back to India. And to give you context, they are being trained to set out to become the first Asian solo circumnavigator around the globe. And they've been doing this for the last 2 years. They've been training. And to give you perspective, the Golden Globe competition just got concluded. And it had 16 participants, out of which 3 completed. And the one person who won was the female, the only participant, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Well done, South Africa. Well done.
The only female participant, and she came first a day prior to her rival. And so we've got Lieutenant Commander Dilna and Lieutenant Commander Rupa, who have a lot of willpower, a lot of grit, and a little bit of crazy, I feel, to be taking this. But we'll play their video and have a look at it. Hi everyone, we would have really loved to connect with all of you on video calling. However, we are presently on a 17-meter vessel navigating our way back home to Goa on 24th May. When we enter Goa Harbour after this 6 months journey through rough seas and not so favorable conditions, we are not looking forward for a happy meal or a visit to the parlour. We are hoping to motivate more young girls to believe that they can achieve anything. This has been truly a test of our grit, and on behalf of all the women in the world, we would like to assure you, we are ready, we got this.
Thank you very much for that very exciting and inspiring session. May I invite Mr. Nagaraj Naidu, Joint Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, to give out tokens of our appreciation to the Indian Naval officers.